Whew.
Hold on, I have to do Foley work of what a cough sounds like. When I was reading the paper that you suggested for today, I thought you should have suggested this a month later so it could be our Halloween episode since it's talking about witches. Is that funny? Is that anything?
You sure crack me up. I don't know if it's for the right reasons.
Thanks.
But before we get into that paper, I wanted you to clarify, do you think things like the Chinese room are not a good way to get people to understand your point?
So I think they are a good way to get people to understand your point, but I think Dennett is right in saying they can strain your kind of logic for a situation so heavily by appealing to intuition for situations for which you will have no intuition. As much as you can pretend to imagine what it would be like to be Mary the color scientist and never see the color red, or to be in the Chinese room furiously translating Chinese, whatever intuitions you have about those situations they're just coming from nowhere. Like, that's so far from what you have experienced.
But if you're trying to explain to someone, okay, AI is not actually thinking, and people say, well, they act like they're thinking, how do we know that they're thinking? And then the Chinese room can be a way to say something can react like it's thinking even though it's not.
Yeah, to be clear, I think that these thought experiments, so the way you first phrased it, are they a good way to get the idea across, like to get people to understand your idea? I think they are absolutely that. I think the problem that Dennett's leaning on is that they also rely on appealing to your intuition. So they not only convey, okay, I know what you're trying to say about AI, but they convey, oh, it is perfectly obvious to me now that AI is not thinking. That they don't just have this like describing your point element, but they have this like almost emotional appeal, rhetorical element, like convincing you of the point.
Okay, so you think they're like nearly bashing you over the head to get the point across in a way that is a dark design pattern.
I was about to say, dare I say, it's a dark pattern that makes it seem like this is an automatic thing. Like, I don't have to engage in deeper critical thought because it's so kind of fluent and smooth to my intuition.
I can see that.
Are all of our episodes just the same topic? Maybe that's a good thing.
Life is one big dark design pattern.
It's like the Wikipedia thing, where if you just keep clicking the first reference enough, it gets to philosophy every time. If you just keep clicking this podcast enough, it's just, I don't know, dual processes, I guess.
But do you think AI is thinking?
I don't know. I think AI is probably not yet thinking, but I don't know, maybe some of it is. I think there is no reason that AI can never be thought to be producing thoughts any more than humans. Like, I don't think we'd have some, if you drill down conceptually deep enough into what thought is, I don't think there's eventually something that's like, aha, this is the chestnut that separates humans from everything else. I think we kind of went through this with animal cognition, that they kept building up like, well, sure, animals think, but they don't strategize. Okay, sure, they strategize, but they don't exploit their environment to blah, blah, blah. I think it's kind of the same with AI. Like, it becomes just like conceptual hair slicing to say, well, AI does this, but it doesn't do this.
So what do you think of people calling it spicy autocorrect?
Yeah, sure. Like, so I don't know why I was going to phrase it this way, but like, so is your mother. Like, so are human beings sometimes. Like, if you, depending on what level of kind of critical thought you're putting into something, sometimes people are just doing spicy autocorrect.
That's exactly what I was thinking whenever I heard that term. Mostly because we don't really know what, like, consciousness thinking. We don't really have proper definitions for those things that can accurately separate, like, humans from AI, humans from animals, and as you said, splitting hairs up until a point where we have to accept it. And a lot of the things that AI is doing appears to be things that people do all the time. Like, when you're starting to think about a sentence, you don't know the end before you start. And a lot of the times you'll start a sentence and be like, okay, where the hell is this sentence going? So you are really doing an,
Yeah, you're doing it
it's
right
not
now.
autocorrect. Exactly.
I was going to say, anyone who's ever heard me do a podcast knows that that's how humans produce natural language anyway.
I've completely forgotten what the word is. It's not spicy autocorrect. It's spicy autocomplete.
Autocomplete, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we're running an automatic autocomplete. You also have AI falling for like cognitive biases, like the Linda problem. Like if you
Yeah.
the old AIs, when you gave them the Linda problem, they would fall for that. It feels like AI is a type of associative thinking that's kind of the automatic thinking that we do. Going back to dual process theory, everything is dual process theory. And that's why it fails on things like how many ores are in strawberry, or initially it was really bad at counting because it was just semantic knowledge. It was never logical knowledge. But
Or if you
even with
asked it how to
semantic
keep
knowledge,
cheese on the pizza, it would say to put glue in there. Quickly, do we want to say what the Linda problem is? I can summarize it and see if I remember what it is since you brought it up. I
right,
think it's if you say there's a lady named Linda who attends rallies on the weekends, and she, I don't know, she wears glasses and has an NPR tote bag and shit. Is it more likely that Linda is a librarian, or that Linda is a librarian and is a feminist? And then because all the cues are making you think she's a feminist, the wrong answer, the automatic thinking answer, is to say that one. But no, of course, it's more likely she is one thing than both one thing and also another thing.
yeah, it's the conjunction fallacy, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't that the technical term for pink eye?
I have no idea how you got there, but you got me.
Conjunctivitis.
Right.
It's a little joke for the pink eye fans in the audience.
Pink eye connoisseurs. I do believe she's a banker in the Linda problem, but it's...
Am I canceled for making her a librarian?
The conjunction fallacy just says that if she is a banker and a feminist, she's obviously a banker. But also, she could have all those characteristics and just not be a feminist. I think it's that she goes to feminist rallies, is the word.
Yeah, I was trying to... I didn't remember how close it got to just straight up saying, like, she is a feminist, therefore...
But anyway, like, she could not go to feminist rallies and still be a feminist.
Yeah, she could go while children, representing Westboro Baptist Church or something. She could be on the other side.
It applies to all bankers, but it could not apply to banker and feminist. But yeah, so the AI falls for that kind of problem. It falls down to problems that people fall down on. If you try and define thinking in a way that only falls on people and not on AI, it's almost impossible. And yeah, eventually, if it quacks like a duck, we're going to have to say it's thinking.
Have you seen the new hotness in people saying, like, look how stupid GPT-5 is, and then you give it one of those kinds of fallacy-producing riddles, but you give it in, like, the opposite way? So you would say all that stuff, and then you're like, what's more likely? Linda is a banker and a feminist, or Linda is the CEO of Alphabet, and then the AI is like, obviously it's more likely she's just one thing, the CEO of Alphabet. And you're like, no, you idiot, that's we already know who that person is, that's not Linda. But every time they do these reverse riddles, just like the whole point is, like, now the AI has learned the riddles or the fallacies, so it answers what you would expect, but we change the wording. But now I fall for it every time because I also know all these riddles and fallacies. I'm like, oh shit, they've upgraded the riddles to be too strong that now I can't solve them anymore.
Even the humans are failing.
Yeah, it used to be like AI fails for the same things that normies fail for. Now it's like, okay, AI fails in the same way that mega nerds fail, but it's still not thinking.
It's like when people say, oh, AI is never going to take our jobs. Look how shit it is at doing this one task. And I'm like, have you seen how shit people are doing these one tasks?
Yeah, I often say when they say, like, oh, GPT-5 has PhD level intelligence or whatever, I'm like, oh, some of the dumbest people I know are PhDs, so that's fine.
I've seen some horrible graphs from PhD students too.
Yeah, graph crimes are everywhere.
Quantitative data analysis.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into your witch hunt, shall we?
Yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. It's time for a witch hunt.
So one paper I want to talk about is called The Great AI Witch Hunt, Reviewers' Perceptions and Misconceptions of Generative AI in Research Writing. And the general idea the authors had when writing this paper was that people are using Gen AI tools in academic writing. People who maybe have English as their second language use it to fix up their writing. Maybe after you wrote a paragraph and you've looked at it over 5 times and you're like, oh, there's something wrong here. They put it into ChatGPT to maybe fix it a little bit, ask it to, I don't know, write an outline, whatever ChatGPT
Your
can
abstract
do to
is
help.
stuck at 151 words and you need to get it to 150 words.
Yeah, so these are the kind of things that people are using AI for. And the author said that there is a bit of an anti-AI bias. Not that we're all super AI here on the podcast, but they believe that there is anti-AI bias, and that could make it so reviewers think worse of your paper just because you say that you used AI for this, and this. They might not trust the rest of your paper.
I think it's both that they will not like that you said you used AI, but also that they will pick up on certain characteristics and be like, I think that's AI generated. I don't like this paper. To me, this is calling out the AI version of the person who's like, I can always tell.
So they were saying that if people get badly reviewed because they use AI, then they're less likely to report that they use AI in the future, and that will make it worse, where people will say, oh, well, I really think this used AI, but they say they didn't. Let's have a big fight about it. And they wanted to see, can reviewers actually notice when AI is used or not? And if they do notice, do they review the paper worse than if they don't notice? And they had only 17 participants did this, but they needed to get people who were Chi reviewers because that's what they chose. So Chi, CSCW, and I think some of the highest rated top tier HCI conferences. But they were only able to get 17 people who do reviews, probably because people who do reviews are busy enough. They don't need to go around doing fake reviews.
That crossed my mind too, that I was like, man, if they asked me to participate in this, if they were like close colleagues, I would have done it. But if it was just randoms, as someone who does do a lot of reviews, I would have been like, nah, I have enough time spent on reviewing.
So I'll let them pass for the 17, but
yeah,
I would have liked more. And nicely enough for the people who had to do the experiment, they only had to review abstracts, so it wasn't full papers. But when they did review them, they basically had 6 different abstracts that they had to review. 2 of them were entirely human written. 2 of them were first written by a human, but then rephrased by generative AI. So basically they were given the abstract and told, can you rewrite this abstract, make it better, and so on. And then there was the last one that was entirely generated by Gen AI using the text of the article itself as a prompt, as opposed to just taking the abstract and rephrasing it.
And they had a nice little demonstration of how they did those 2 different prompts. I liked their little color-coded figures for how these were prompted.
I didn't look further than the colors. I was like, oh, that's cool. But
you only read for the pictures. I only read for the articles. It all works out.
So they wanted to test if people could tell between AI and non-AI worked. They wanted to test if it affected how they judged the manuscript for quality, clarity, different aspects like that. And they wanted to also see if someone thought this was higher AI, as in they thought it was more likely that this was written by AI, would they put them down on clarity, quality, and so on. And I think they also looked at reviewer expertise, if that affected.
So they had you pick between like 16 topics. You had to pick your most expert topic and your least expert, and you reviewed an abstract from each topic to see if that would influence how well you could spot AI, basically.
And generally, they found that people could not tell between the AI prompts, even for the prompts where they thought AI was involved. There was no general bias against AI, so no one reduce the clarity, the quality, any of those variables because of AI. So it was kind of against what you would expect. I think they expected it to be that people would have this bias and would say, oh, because people used AI in this paper, I'm going to review them worse. But it's not really what they found.
Yeah, and they had a nice qualitative analysis to kind of dig into why that might not be the quantitative finding. And I think this kind of says it all, that like the big finding to me was that the people who say I can always tell cannot always tell. That when they were asked like what are the indicators you use to tell when something is AI generated as opposed to written by a human, people picked a handful of different features that they said, let me find they had a list in the discussion of some of these features. They anyway said that there was certain things in writing that made it seem more human or less human, like the conciseness of the language, the variety of language, the use of certain punctuation, like lists followed by a colon or like items in parentheses. But some people pointed those things out as things that are giveaways that it's AI, and others pointed those same features out as giveaways that it's human written. So I think that on its own, like that we're all using completely different heuristics to identify what is AI writing, kind of gets to this point of like, if we can't even tell, for, I would say in finger quotes, good AI writing, like successfully paraphrased, kind of well-managed AI assisted writing, since our heuristics don't work to tell that stuff from human written writing, then it kind of stands to reason that we also can't separate the quality of one from the other.
It reminds me of what I keep seeing online of people trying to say, okay, I can tell it's AI written because this, and this. And usually the things are, okay, it's actually written like a newspaper article, or it's actually written like someone has an editor that actually knows how words should be written. So usually if I'm marking an assignment, students tend to write worse than AI.
So I would agree with that in general.
Sometimes you can tell it's AI because it's written better. So it's not always the case that because it's better, it's not AI, or because it's better, it is AI.
Yeah, and of course that's different for like if you're reviewing just student written work versus reviewing something that's reasonably being submitted to a top conference or journal. But I think this also points to like the way you described it as like having an editor who kind of knows the style of the genre. This to me points to the fact that like our style has become so uniform in social science, scientific academic writing, that it's like the most kind of median, I don't know, Chi paper or like top tier journal article. So we're both editors at IJHCS, one of the big human computer interaction journals. So we get to read and review a ton of papers at that journal. And I would say like the average paper is so kind of formulaically written, from kind of which sections there are, how each section flows and is written, that it's not surprising that AI can copy that style. That's actually why I really like a paper like last time we talked, the speculation pump paper. There's no way AIs are writing the speculation pump paper yet. AI can write like me writing an empirical paper. AI cannot write like Antisocial Scientists and Casper Hornbeck writing a theoretical kind of, I don't want to say like pie in the sky, but you know, a highbrow paper. But I think if we're just writing the same kind of empirical paper again and again, yeah, AI can probably write in that style because it's just so damn formulaic.
I think AI could do the figures in the Hornback paper.
Maybe it would actually get too creative, that it wouldn't just be like the pencil sketch of a water pump.
But also, I feel like AI writing has changed my writing, because I didn't really know how to use what's that line that
the
everyone
M
uses now?
dash.
The M dash. I didn't really even know how to use the M dash before everyone started talking about it. And then I learned about it and I was like, oh, this is actually useful. And then started using it.
I'm a big M dash user. I always was, but now I'm like self-conscious about using it, so I've gone the other way. I'm reminded also we had a discussion at IGHCS among editors about our AI use policy. The policy at our journal is that you have to declare how and whether you used AI at the end, kind of a section right after your conclusion, kind of same area where acknowledgments would be. And we generally take a pretty open approach to saying, yeah, feel free to use AI to improve the style and quality of your writing. Don't use it to, generate your results, obviously, that you still have ownership of your writing. But among these discussions, one of my colleagues shared an email exchange that they had, that they had replied to some email that a colleague sent, and the colleague wrote back, hey, by the way, you should consider not using AI for your emails. It seems very cold and not very human when you respond to emails like that. And my colleague replied back immediately, I didn't use AI, I'm just autistic. But I think this is informative too, that to the extent that we will do an AI witch hunt in academic publishing, we are also doing a witch hunt of people who communicate differently than ourselves. I'm aware of this as a native English speaker, that I don't want to be ranting and raving that oh, you're always using these these certain AI sounding phrases, like starting sentences with however or something like that. I don't know, you might be basically translating your paper from your native language, either in your brain or in AI, from one language into English. So I'm not trying to come at you for your word choice and calling you sounding like a robot over it.
Yeah, because I think that there has been more cases of people being accused of using AI when they're foreign, because English as a second language has issues that people assume, like we saw in this paper, certain people assume that worse English is a sign of AI. And even in general, if people are talking with a heavier accent, the fact that you have to put in more mental effort to decode that accent makes you think that their words are less authoritative and less correct. So it's just an offshoot of this kind of bias towards people who aren't good at communicating, because we automatically think that if you're not good at communicating, then the points that you're making aren't good as well.
That actually reminds me also of a random finding from financial economics. Don't ask me why I know academic findings from financial economics, but there was a finding. So a lot of people will publish a paper of hey, look at this weird anomaly. These certain types of investments make more money than you would expect. And then as soon as these are published, they pretty much disappear right away. But one kind of meta finding was that when these anomaly papers are published by people with more ethnically diverse last names, so non kind of Western European last names, the anomalies last longer. That is to say, investors trust the finding less, which is crazy. There's money being left on the table because of this bias towards scientific communicators from kind of Western Europe, North America. So yeah, this is all just to say the witch hunt, it's not without harm that you're accusing someone of being AI. That said, I think I don't want to come out as Mr. Pro AI writing either. We both had the experience of student papers where the student clearly did not engage with the content at all, had AI generate the entire paper for them, and hadn't demonstrated any learning from the class whatsoever. I think there's a time and a place for an AI witch hunt, but going for every academic paper that you're asked to review and claiming that it was written by AI is not a good solution.
Honestly, with the students, if they had just submitted a blank page that said, I would have used AI for this, I would just give them a B and be happier I didn't have to waste my time marking a paper that AI
That would be
wrote.
so clutch. That would be grading a whole paper in 10 seconds.
back when I was paid like what, €1 per paper.
Yeah, when we worked in the paper grading sweatshop together. Yeah, I'll challenge our listenership. Write a paper that you don't think an AI could write. Write something provocative and weird and crazy, because it's so boring to read again and again the same empirical paper format.
Yeah, I think now that I'm reviewing people to hire a PhD student, I'm extra cognizant of, is this AI written or not? Because
Yeah,
like, how else am I going to find out if they can actually think about the content of their work or not?
yeah, it's pretty important to know whether someone who's about to do a PhD cares enough to critically think about their work.
But I guess I'll burn that bridge when I get to it, or whatever they
Yeah,
say.
exactly. You'll hire a native English speaker who's 6 feet tall, handsome, good communicator.
And turn them into a paper mill.
Yeah, exactly. Now I've just screwed all of the handsome native English speaking good communicators who applied for you, because now if you do hire them, it will look like you have this bias.
Yeah. Now I'll be biased against them, and they'll sue this podcast.
Classic reverse racism. That would be cool if we had like a minor social impact like that if we got canceled by the right wing. I welcome it.
And we become so famous.
Yeah. Never have to review a paper again.
Just like Lil Nas X just got arrested for walking down the street in his underwear, apparently very much on drugs. And I'm just thinking, can't a boy just have a hobby?
Yeah, what the hell? He does it once and gets arrested. You do it 100 times and never a peep.
Exactly. Where's my fame and fortune?
Where's my record deal?
So,
Right.
Tell me about all the wonderful research you know about, and not just me.
I this is like we're burning all of our expertise in the first few here. But I'm going to, after your very cognitive first couple episodes, I was like, hey, I know some cognitive stuff. I studied cognitive science and nominally apply this to my research. I'm going to tell you about multitasking. So what is your view on multitasking? Are you someone who says like, I'm a good/bad multitasker? Are you someone who says multitasking isn't real, it's not possible?
I think that it depends on how you define it. Like, I enjoy listening to music while I'm working. Do you count that as multitasking? I also enjoy sometimes having a TV in the background while I'm doing something that's particularly boring. But the idea of you actively being able to do two things at once, or at least keep switching back and forth quite quickly, usually what happens is that you become worse at both. But sometimes being worse at both is worth it. Like if I'm doing something on Excel or something incredibly boring and I have a TV on in the background, yes, I'm going to be less fast than I would be if I was just doing the Excel sheet, but I would also be more bored and I would give up sooner. So I think it's about balance.
Yeah, honestly, I think I wasted a lot of years and money on degrees because you pretty much nailed it. I have nothing more to add. No, yeah. I think you're exactly right that it's important to define what we even mean by multitasking, and it's important to discuss kind of what kinds of multitasking are harmful to each other. How are they? What makes multitasking more or less harmful?
Did I spoil your
no, not at all.
Work before the end, just like you spoiled my work?
Yeah, we need like a third co-host who's like a complete idiot who we can ask questions to. I think we both thought we were getting that with each other, and now we're both fucked. Who's the dumbest colleague we have on three? We'll both say their name. Yeah, no, you pretty much are right on, but I will go through, as you said, it's important to have kind of definitions for what we mean by multitasking. So I'll talk through some of these definitions that we have. So I'll start with a Chi paper from 2009 by Dario Salvucci, Niels Totkin, and Jelmer Borst. This is called A Unified Theory of the Multitasking Continuum from Concurrent performance to task switching, interruption, and resumption. So basically, as you say, there's a lot of different things that we might count as multitasking. And figure 1 of this paper is a timeline that the kind of x-axis of the timeline is time scales. So from seconds to hours, how much time is spent on one task before switching to the other. And some of the examples of multitasked tasks that exist on this continuum are, for example, driving and talking, that I think it's pretty uncontroversial to say that it's possible to drive and talk to someone while you're driving. You might kind of go in and out of how much you're focusing on the conversation depending on the driving, but it's pretty possible to do that kind of multitasking. So
I can say that I'm finally able to do that. It
Nice.
took 2 years, but
or for
I can
example, I
finally
know
do
you
it.
used to listen to podcasts in the car. You could do that while driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and maybe it would be that you would miss some parts of the podcast and be like, oh shit, I don't know what they're talking about now because I was so focused on the driving. But still, you were able to complete both of these tasks to some degree concurrently. And then on the other side of this is sequential multitasking. So when you're on one thing for quite a long time before switching back. So they give the example of cooking and reading a book, that you might, for example, put food in the oven that has to bake for 3 hours, and you might, in the meantime, read a couple chapters of a book. And eventually you will have both accomplished cooking baking your cake and baking your 3-hour cake and reading your 3 hours of book in that time, even though you're not constantly going kind of back and forth in attention. That we can
My
think
partner has that.
Yeah.
He does sequential multitasking when we play video games. So we'll be playing a co-op game, and then as soon as it gets to the cutscene, he pulls out his phone and he's on Twitter.
I thought you were going to say he pulls out his phone and he's playing like a turn-based strategy game or something.
But I wanted to reference him because the only reason he listened to the first episode is because I said, oh, I talked about you. So now if I talk about him on every episode, throw strays his way.
We got to aim higher
he'll
and talk
listen.
about like Joe Rogan and Sam Altman or something and get them to listen.
God, I don't want them to listen.
But we could be famous. We could be canceled. Yeah. So that's kind of our table stakes, that when we talk about multitasking, we are talking about any of those kind of extremes that you mentioned, that it can be something you're going kind of quickly back and forth between two things, or it can be something that two things are progressing at the same time, but neither is kind of requiring so much attention, or one is requiring a lot of attention and the other is not. This actually also brings me to another paper I'll mention. That's two of the same authors from this paper. This is Dario Salvucci and Niels Totken's Threaded Cognition, an Integrated Theory of Concurrent Multitasking, from the Psychological Review from 2008. This was published at the same time as the same authors wrote a book called The Multitasking Mind, which kind of has this article and the Kai paper both kind of in the book, and expands on them. But it's, again, kind of demonstrating or illustrating first what we mean by multitasking and then what are the effects of multitasking. And they, again, use this cooking metaphor. And this one, I learned this one as an undergrad, and it kind of always stuck with me to kind of understand what we mean by multitasking and what is happening when we multitask. So they give the example, imagine you're cooking a nice kind of dinner for a party, that you're baking some fish and you're cooking some pasta and you're baking a cake. That you can somehow make progress on all three of these tasks. So we can think of these three things, the fish, the pasta, and the cake, as a thread that has multiple tasks in it. And we can think of these threads as kind of interwoven, that you can make progress on one thread before completing another one. That it's not that you have to completely bake the fish before you do anything related to the pasta. So they give the
Parallel processing.
Yeah, well, to an extent, that there are parallel threads and there are shared resources, but there, as you said, there's still like a kind of serial task executor. There's like a serial function in there that you can't, while you can drive and talk, you're either attending to the driving or attending to the talking and kind of putting the other one on autopilot to some extent. So likewise, You might be preheating the oven, and then while the oven preheats, you're starting to boil the water for the pasta, and while both of those are happening, you're mixing the cake batter. So you can work on multiple tasks at the same time, and then as resources become available, so once the oven heats up, you can throw the fish in there. Later on, once the fish is out of the oven, you can throw the cake in there. As resources free up, these threads are greedy and they kind of ask for the resources. They become the thing you're attending to because the other resources are available. Same that you've probably had the experience of someone learning to talk and drive a car at the same time, that it might be that you're making a turn and someone says something to you, and you heard that they said something, but all you were thinking was don't go over the dashed lines and crash into someone. So once you finish the turn, you're like, sorry, say that again. That now that your kind of attentional resources have freed back up, you can get back to the thread of the conversation instead of having resources dedicated to the driving task.
It's also a great excuse, because even now that I can listen to people while I drive, I tell them I can't, so that they don't talk to me.
Yeah, I tell people that I can't read so that they don't make me review papers. So I live in Finland, and often
You can't read?
There will be often I can't read. That's also true. But often there will be people selling things. Often on in downtown in my city, there are people either asking you to sign up for the Red Cross to donate blood, or they're asking you to change your electricity contract or sign up for a newspaper or magazine. And for the people, I know a little bit of Finnish now. So for the people asking me to donate blood, I know how to say I do not have any blood. For the people who are asking me to sign up for a newspaper, I know how to say I don't know how to read. Or I can just say I don't speak Finnish, and then if they say in English whatever they want, I say I also don't speak English.
The perfect crime.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly work, but maybe this is the same as what you're doing with your driving and talking. Hopefully you don't drive around anyone who listens to this podcast, because now they'll know your secrets. And hopefully none of these salesmen listen. So these papers also make reference to some work by Christopher Wickens. So I'll reference Wickens' multiple resource theory. This isn't the one I was thinking of, but it may as well be. He has a new review out that I didn't even know about from 2024. The multiple resource theory model, some misconceptions and data interpretations in the Human Factors and Ergonomical Society conference proceedings. So Wickens has been working on this since the 80s. He was studying how air traffic controllers kind of navigate. I mean navigate metaphorically, not navigate the skies. How air traffic controllers manage having so many complex tasks to deal with, of monitoring altitude and monitoring this flight and that flight and communicating to this pilot and that pilot. So he made this observation that not only is it that some tasks are more suitable for multitasking in general, that maybe tasks that require pretty low effort, like having a cake in the oven and only occasionally having to do something about that, is pretty good for multitasking. There are also different qualities or different characteristics of tasks that make them more suitable to multitasking with each other or make them more disruptive to each other. So, for example, you can drive and listen to a podcast, but I bet you can't listen to a song and listen to a podcast, or I bet you can't listen to a podcast and review a Chi paper at the same time.
Yeah, that's one of the things whenever I'm doing work, is that I need to have music with no words in them, or else I get distracted. So it has to be classical music or cinematic music from films and things like that, so that I can actually pay attention to the words.
Yeah, a lot of people who do kind of writing work for a living, I've heard this same thing from, and I'm the same way, that it has to be either music that's not in a language that you understand or doesn't have words at all, because it's really hard to focus on this, what Wickens would call the verbal encoding, to focus on things that are using words. at the same time, that because they share this resource, that they have the same encoding or the same access, as apparently the model now calls it. It's really hard to multitask those together. They're demanding the same resource, so they're the sorts of tasks that when one stops using the resource, the other might ask for it. So if you were listening to a song that had English words or words that you could understand, and then it stopped playing, then suddenly you could probably read a little bit more of the paper or write a little bit more. But then as soon as that's taken away, that resource is gone from that task. Only one resource can kind of get that characteristic. Only one task can get that resource characteristic at the same time.
Is this resource just your working memory, like your phonological
It
loop
relates,
and whatever
yeah. So there are these so the Baddeley model of working memory has these what are they called now? Like subservient processes, secondary processes. I think they were once referred to as slave processes, but I think we probably don't say that in 2025. So that's part of it, but not all of it. That Wickens draws this. He draws a cube to describe this four-dimensional model, so I've always kind of thought it's like a hypercube, and I don't really understand space in 4 dimensions. Maybe he should have color-coded something to make a different dimension. But these different working memory subprocesses are part of it, but also there's kind of a higher level. So the 4 dimensions are this encoding or access, and the levels of that are spatial or verbal. There's modalities, tactile, auditory, or visual. There's responses, so manual, spatial, or vocal, verbal. So if you're required to respond to an action, if you're required to not just pay attention to something, but also produce some behavior, you might be producing manual spatial behavior. So you might be turning a steering wheel and looking around the road, or you might be producing vocal, verbal response. So you might be listening to what the person's saying and then talking. And then there's also differences across stages of cognition. So you might be just perceiving, or you might be he calls this stage cognition. You might be thinking through things, decision making, I guess you might call that stage. Or you might be producing behavior, responding. So to some extent, it's these working memory processes, but it's also the kind of stage of cognition that you're in at all, that it could be that, these 2 tasks are different in one is like a verbal task and one is a spatial task, but both are requiring me to make a decision. Like I probably would have a lot of trouble solving a Rubik's Cube and a crossword puzzle at the same time, because they're both demanding cognition from me, even though one is requiring kind of a manual spatial thing and the other is requiring a verbal thing.
Yeah. Although with the Rubik's Cube, once you know all the algorithms, you're basically just reacting.
Yeah, this is why I said because I don't know the algorithms. One could probably do both of these at the same time. I am not that one. Or I would probably be pretty annoyed if while I was assembling IKEA furniture, someone kept asking me trivia questions. Now, I normally like when people randomly ask me trivia questions, but I think that the kind of cognition and decision-making required for IKEA furniture assembly, at least for me, a spatial idiot, is so high that I wouldn't also be able to deeply consider answers to questions.
Not to bring everything back to dual process theory.
Please.
But one of the things I think is important to remember from that is that a lot of things, a lot of the time, the player part of you doesn't want to do anything and wants the sim to be doing the work. So the more it can transfer a task to be automatic and performed by the sim, the more it wants to. And therefore, if something is performed by the sim, it has attention to put somewhere else. So the things you can multitask, assumedly, are the things that the sim can do. Except for in the instances where you were saying where the same sim is working on the same thing. So the sim wouldn't be able to do 2 things that involves their hands because their hands are already in use, but they can do things that involve their feet and their hands because they're separate systems. Is that the kind of idea?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a really good way of kind of tying these things together, that I think the common kind of ancestor common resource between these is attention, that's like so important to both decision making literature and to multitasking literature, that yeah, the more you can offload attention, the happier you are. And this kind of gets at so I said this is about multitasking and interruptions. So I gave this example from the threaded cognition paper, that you might be going from preparing the fish to preparing the pasta to preparing the cake. And in kind of an ideal world, they really neatly, as the attender, as the person, as the chef gets done one thing, they can just gracefully move to the next thing, and things are just like freeing up at just the right moment. But if you're as chaotic a home chef as me, you know it's never this way. That if I was trying to make 3 things at once, you better believe the pasta water is going to boil over. So sometimes, yeah, threads don't just wait for the resource to free up. Threads become needy or become hot on their own. They interrupt you. If the pasta water starts boiling over, it's unlikely that you're going to say, "Just a moment, pasta water, I'm still stirring the cake batter." You'll probably abandon that thread and jump right into another one, that one task or one thread interrupts another.
3 hot single threads in your area.
Yeah, the sim in me is trying to find not hot, single, yes, as non-multiple as possible. Yeah, so as these threads become hot, they interrupt each other. And the Kai paper, the concurrent multitasking unified theory paper, has also some discussion of interruption. So this is also... this was something I had to think through a lot in my PhD, of what is an interruption, what is multitasking, are these the same things? This paper essentially says that, yeah, interruptions are on this continuum of multitasking, that it's one task competing for resources from another task, and often taking resources from another task. So how do we handle interruptions when one task asks for your attention and the other task is still ongoing? So they describe in figure 3 of this paper the idea of interruption lags and resumption lags. So let's say you're stirring the cake batter and suddenly the pasta water boils over. It is not that the second that you notice, or like the moment you notice that the pasta water is boiling over, everything stops with the cake task and you switch to the pasta task. You do some kind of cleaning up of the task that you were already engaged in. So if you have like, let's say a hand mixer that's plugged in your hands and it's spinning rapidly, you don't just let it go, like open your hand and move over to the pasta, because now you're going to make that cake task a lot worse too. You're going to send cake batter everywhere, make a huge mess. So there's some interruption lag. There's some lag between stopping the task that you were already engaged in and beginning the next task. And what you're doing is cleaning up the primary task. You're making it so it's easy to resume, because you figure, I have to get back to this cake thing eventually. Let me make it not so painful to get back to. So let me turn off the mixer and put it down gently, and then quickly hop over to the pasta situation. And then when you finish your interrupting task, your secondary task, when you clean up the pasta water and turn it down a bit and put a lid on that thing, hock to a lid on that thing. Are we still doing that? Is this that kind of podcast? Probably the first person who's ever done a hock to a reference in the middle of explaining a cognitive science Kai paper.
There's your Guinness World Record.
Yeah, where is my plaque? As you end the pasta task, likewise, there's a resumption lag. So there's a lag to get back to the cake task, that you're not simply picking up exactly where you left off, and as soon as you stop pasta, you have, mixer at same speed, same position as it was before. There's some recall needed and some like setting up needed. So in the cake task, it might be like, okay, how much what ingredients did I need to put in next? Did I put everything in? Do I need to beat this until it's stiff peaks or until it's lumpy or whatever? Look, I don't bake that.
Clearly you bake, yeah. You're kind of loading everything back into RAM in a sense.
Exactly, yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Like
that
whenever
the task is cached, but you need to actually load it in.
Yeah, whenever I'm writing a paper, I find that if I come back to it, I have to basically reread parts of it so I get back in the mindset of, okay, this is what I was trying to say, these are the things. So you're just putting all the relevant information back in there into kind of your front of mind so you can start picking at it and using it again. And whenever you leave the task, you have to like dump all that again, and find the cache from the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that using those like information tasks like that make it a lot more clear what this interruption lag and resumption lag is, that especially the resumption lag, that like you said, coming back to a paper or something that you were writing before and you look at where you left off and you're like, what was this whole thing about? Where am I with this? Especially if it's been a while since you looked at that writing. And there's actually some good empirical literature also from Borst and Tatkin, so two of the authors of this, around how interruption lag and resumption lag are related to each other, that the more effort we put into that interruption lag, into that cleaning up the task that you're abandoning, the easier the resumption is going to become. That if we can interrupt ourselves at a good moment, or like pick a good part to stop. So like instead of stopping mid-sentence of what you're writing and hoping that you can remember how you wanted to finish that sentence, stopping at the end of a sentence, or instead of stopping mid-paragraph or mid-chapter, stopping between chapters. So picking these good natural breakpoints is what that literature calls those parts of the task, where it will be easier to... Yeah?
Did they ever tell you to leave a little note for yourself at the end, being like, this is what I was going to write next?
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to say that the more maintenance you do with the interruption lag, the better. So if you also leave some instructions to yourself of like, not just finish the chapter, but then start your, like, leave some notes about how you were thinking of the next chapter going, or leave some outline for what to do next, even better. The more effort you're putting into the interruption lag, the less difficult the resumption lag is going to be.
Okay, that makes sense. Not that I write notes for myself. I think I should.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I definitely feel it.
Same as our dual processing stuff, that like, man, this research makes me think of all sorts of things that I should do better in my real life.
Yeah. What happens when the player also doesn't want to do it? Then you're really fucked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're too lazy to tackle your interruption lag because the player won't do it, and then the resumption lag is so difficult that the player doesn't even know what to make the sim do, then you're like us, that instead of doing your research, you're making a podcast.
Yeah, because that's what the sim wants to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much all I have to say about interruptions and multitasking. You might be now thinking, wow, Justin, you know all about multitasking. You must be great at structuring your life and multitasking and not interrupting things at bad moments. Nah, you can learn all this stuff and not be any good at it, as I know.
Isn't there a paper around it takes 25 minutes for you to get back to the task or something like that? I think Anna shared a paper with me that said something like that.
Yeah,
I never understood that, because like I can understand it takes like 2 or 3 5 minutes to like read up and load up your cache again, but how can it take 25 minutes? That feels a little too long.
I forget the details of that paper. I think it has something to do with not just like remembering the kind of task structure, but also getting into the same like working state
Flow.
that you were in before. Yeah.
I can see if you take a break, it can take up to 25 minutes for you to get back to the task, because that's how long I spend on TikTok in between my Pomodoros. But once I'm in there, I guess I feel like I'm in there. But related to interruptions, one thing about those, have you read Sandy Gould's work? You know him.
Very much so. He was the person who introduced me to HCI.
So he has stuff on interruptions, making you focus more on a task, or breaking you out of your automatic kind of approach to it and putting in more mental effort.
Yeah, he had this medical paper, Now Check Your Input. I'm doing this from memory. I learned about these as an undergrad when he was I was a research assistant and he was my supervisor at UCL. So he was like, he's the whole reason I'm in HCI, him and Duncan. Duncan was my teacher for that class, and he was Sandy's supervisor also. So yeah, this was about lockout for setting automatic IV drips in a medical context. And the kind of observation was if a nurse is setting an automatic IV drip for a patient and they're doing it kind of quite quickly and automatically, there's a decently high likelihood that they might pick the wrong number, that they might, instead of giving 25 cc's per hour, they might give 35 because they accidentally hit the 3 instead of the 2, or they might give 100 because most of the patients on this ward get 100 cc's and this patient only gets 25. So the insight from Sandy, and I think Aisling O'Kane also was an author on this one, was that if you have a small lockout where first you put in the number and then you have to wait like 2 or 3 seconds and then you can hit confirm, a lot of errors are caught in that lockout because you're kicked back to system 1, that the sim has to, the player has to check that the sim got the number right.
Yeah, and I think he did a follow-up paper afterwards where you have to be careful how long the break is, because if it's too long, people will go, like you were talking about when you're cooking, if you have to wait 30 minutes for the baking, then you're going to interrupt that task with a different task, so you start multitasking. Whereas if the break or interruption is only 2 or 3 seconds, then you don't have the time to do the interruption and resumption lag of starting a new task. So then you stay on that one and put in the mental effort to check it. But if it's like 7 or 10 seconds, then you're like, okay, this is enough time for me to put this task down and do something else. So then you don't actually get that checking behavior.
Yeah, this is what Anna and Sandy were calling micro boundaries as design frictions. That design frictions is when something is intentionally designed to not be smooth like this, so you have to kind of check and get knocked out of your automatic processing. But this was, arguing, as you said, that these should be micro, that they should be small enough that you're not completely switching tasks, that it's only just making you kind of more cognizant of the task that you're doing, but not being so annoying as to prompt you to switch to some other task.
I think one of the issues with things like TikTok and other micro video platforms is that they're so easy to slot into those boundaries. Like I said, my partner, when we're going through a 10-second cutscene, will whip out his phone and start watching videos. Or when I'm going to pee for 10 seconds, I'll whip out my phone and start watching videos. It's like...
You didn't have to offer that information up, so that was bold of you to do so.
What, you don't watch videos when you're peeing?
I'm not offering up the information of whether I do. Yeah, I only watch videos of poop. I only watch YouTube poop videos.
Wow. I guess I'll have to edit that out now.
This actually, though, reminded me that, these bite-sized, like, micro tasks or micro entertainment are really easy to slot in between tasks. This was some good research from Shamsi Iqbal at Microsoft, who was also like the internship supervisor for like half of these UCL people that we just named. She had a paper, I think at Chi in 2021. It was one of the pandemic years, about micro tasks. And basically they designed an app where you could put kind of you could attach like your email and like your Microsoft Word or something to it. So if you were between tasks, like if you had just sent an email and were tabbing over to something else, or even if you were like scrolling Facebook, they like embedded it into your Facebook thread or your Facebook feed, that it would sometimes give you a little window that was like, hey, do you want to write the next sentence of this email? Or like, do you want to choose what to do with this email? And give you like a 5-second version of getting something done from your work. It's a good idea. It's probably really hard to pull off, to find these like bite-sized bits of work to feed people. But yeah, if instead of the 10 seconds while using the bathroom or while waiting for the Spotify commercial to end, if instead of looking at my phone, I was like addressing one email, like even if it was just deleting it, that's something.
It kind of feels dystopian though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had mixed reactions to that paper, that I was like, man, even in my downtime, my work's going to be jumping in and being like, hey, do you want to put one more sentence, one more bit of thought into your work? I probably wouldn't turn on that feature, but maybe there's someone who would.
And with all our chat about having to put in all this information into your RAM and so on, wouldn't writing the next sentence um, completely strip all the context so that people will think your writing is AI because every sentence has a
They
different
feel completely
tone?
disconnected from each other. Yeah. I might be misremembering how they did this microtasking. Shamsi's really smart about multitasking and all this stuff. Like her research is kind of the foundation of like a lot of the other research all the rest of us are doing. So I'm sure she got that right, but it's been a while and I didn't have the tab open.
Although I think in America it'll probably go down better because they love doing work all the time.
Oh yeah, I'll give you one guess of what country Microsoft Shamsi's based in. It's the U.S. office, baby. It's Redmond.
But I think it's like banned in France if they ever try to get you to do that.
Oh yeah, if if your Facebook feed tried to get you to do work in France, they would protest the government. There would be marches in the streets. And good for them. I love that about France.
Yeah, more marches in the street.
Yeah. So is Linda more likely to attend a march in the street in France or in America?
All right. Well, just like an interrupting cow, I think your work was fantastic.
Thank you. For some reason I was going to combine that in another joke where it's like just like an interrupting cow, you're outstanding in your field.
That would have been better. I was waiting for you to say something so I could scream moo, but
I knew what was happening too well, so I kept quiet. I'm Justin Edwards, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oulu.
I'm Diego Garaialde, an assistant professor in computer science in the University College Dublin.
Keeping it alive. And this is Antisocial Scientists, a podcast nominally about HCI topics, but it tends to be more about cognitive science topics, and I don't mind that.
I'll see you next time.